They called it the jewel of its age, a city that gleamed beneath the sun, where towering walls protected markets overflowing with gold, spices, and rare treasures. Its rulers claimed their power came from the gods, and its people believed their city would stand for eternity. To travelers, it seemed indestructible, a place untouched by time or fate. The streets echoed with laughter and music, temples rose toward the heavens, and ships sailed in and out of its harbors carrying riches from distant lands. Generations were born and died within its walls, never imagining that their world could collapse in an instant. Yet beneath this brilliance lay shadows. Ancient legends spoke of a curse, of pride that angered the heavens, of arrogance that demanded punishment. The skies grew restless, the earth trembled, and whispers spread that the gods had turned against the city. Few listened, fewer still believed. And then came the night, a night unlike any other, when the heavens opened, the sea roared, and the ground itself split apart. By dawn, nothing remained. Streets, palaces, temples, and towers, all swallowed into the abyss. Thousands of souls vanished, and what had been the pride of an empire became nothing more than a memory, a myth whispered on the lips of survivors. This is the story of that city, a place that rose to greatness, defied the warnings, and in a single night, sank into darkness forever. Chapter 1. The glory before the fall. Said the city was eternal, rising proudly from the heart of an empire. It stood as a monument to ambition, wealth, and power. The walls stretched higher than any fortress of its age, carved from stone so massive that people whispered only giants could have set them in place. To outsiders, it was a miracle. To those within its walls, it was destiny. This was the city that would never fall, a place that seemed to defy the very passage of time. By day, sunlight struck its golden domes, casting reflections that could be seen from miles away. By night, torches lit its broad avenues, filling the air with music, chatter, and the scent of roasted meats and spices from every corner of the known world. Merchants from distant lands traveled weeks, sometimes months, to bring their caravans here. They came bearing silks, gems, and ivory, but left with even more, because this city was not just a marketplace. It was the beating heart of trade itself. Its temples were carved with symbols of forgotten gods, their towering spires seeming to touch the heavens. Priests moved in solemn processions, chanting prayers older than memory itself, while the rulers of the city watched from their palaces. These rulers claimed divine blood, insisting that the gods themselves had chosen their dynasty to reign forever. The people believed them. Why shouldn't they? Their streets were paved with stone, their wells never ran dry, and their granaries overflowed, while neighboring kingdoms starved. Travelers wrote of gardens so lush they seemed to hold every flower under heaven, of fountains that sprayed water higher than a man's height, of feasts where guests dined on roasted peacock and honeyed figs. Scholars debated philosophy under the shade of marble colonnades, while generals marched through gates draped in victory banners. Every aspect of the city was designed to impress, to inspire, and to remind its people that they lived in a place chosen by fate. Children played in courtyards, surrounded by mosaics that glittered like jewels. Women adorned themselves with ornaments of silver and gold, while craftsmen shaped tools and sculptures that seemed far ahead of their time. Ships filled the harbors, their sails decorated with the emblems of kings and merchants from lands as far away as deserts, jungles, and icy northern seas. To its citizens, this prosperity felt permanent. Their lives were wrapped in the security of walls and wealth. Generations were born, raised, and buried under the belief that nothing could shake their city. Some even said it was blessed with immortality, a place untouched by war, plague, or famine. But not everyone was convinced. Among the songs of triumph, there were whispers. Travelers told stories of omens in the sky, of stars that flickered strangely above the towers. Farmers outside the walls claimed the earth sometimes groaned beneath their feet. Priests warned that pride always drew the eyes of the gods, and the gods were not always merciful. Yet within the city walls, laughter drowned out warnings, and ambition silenced fear. The rulers continued their feasts. The merchants filled their coffers. The people danced in the streets. To them, destiny was unshakable. The city had stood for centuries, and surely it would stand for centuries more. But history has shown us time and again, pride has a price. No city, no empire, no dynasty lasts forever. The brighter the flame, the more dramatic the fall. And so, as the sun set on the final days of this magnificent city, no one could have imagined that within a single night, the streets would fall silent, the temples would crumble, and the waters would rise. The city that was thought eternal would vanish without a trace, swallowed by forces no army could fight. Its people would not wake to another morning dot, and the world would inherit only a legend. The legend of the city that sank in a single night. Chapter 2. Whispers of doom. Every empire carries its shadows, and even the brightest city cannot silence the whispers of fate. Long before the night of destruction, signs had begun to appear, subtle at first, then undeniable. Yet the rulers and the people chose not to listen. They had built their walls too high, and their pride higher still. Farmers outside the gates were the first to notice. They spoke of tremors beneath the earth, of strange cracks snaking through once stable fields. Livestock grew restless without cause, bolting in panic as though chased by invisible predators. Wells that had always given fresh water sometimes bubbled with a bitter taste, as though the land itself was souring from within. Fishermen told darker tales. On calm nights, when the moon should have glistened across still waters, the sea churned without warning. Nets were dragged down as if by unseen hands, and strange lights flickered deep beneath the waves. Some claimed to have seen ghostly shapes moving in the currents, vast, serpentine forms that had no place in mortal waters, dotting the skies above the city. Omens grew impossible to ignore. The stars themselves seemed to shift, their constellations breaking apart as if some great hand had scattered them. A red moon hung heavy one night, staining the streets in a blood-colored glow. Priests warned that such a sign foretold the end of dynasties, but their voices were drowned out by music, feasts, and drunken laughter echoing through the palaces. There were those who tried to speak louder. Prophets stood at the city gates, shouting warnings to anyone who would listen. "Repent," they cried. "Your arrogance has angered the heavens. The earth trembles with fury. The sea waits to swallow you whole." But they were mocked, pelted with rotten fruit, and driven away by guards. In a city that believed itself eternal, no one had time for doomsayers. Still, the whispers spread. Children spoke of dreams filled with fire and floods. Old women muttered of a curse laid upon the city generations ago, a curse waiting for its hour to strike. Even among the palace servants, gossip grew, of sleepless nights where the king woke screaming, claiming to see shadows moving along his chamber walls. Yet each warning was met with denial. The rulers doubled their banquets, ordering grander displays of wealth to prove their invincibility. Musicians were commanded to play louder, drowning out the voices of fear. Priests who spoke of doom were silenced or replaced with others who promised safety, prosperity, and the eternal blessing of the gods. But the city could not escape its own senses. The air itself seemed heavier in those days, as though the world was holding its breath. Dogs barked at nothing. Birds abandoned their nests in the city walls, circling above before vanishing forever. At night, the streets grew unnaturally quiet, as if the stones themselves were listening. One evening, a great crack split through the marketplace, toppling stalls and scattering coins across the ground. The earth had opened like a wound. People fled in terror. But by the next day, the fissure was filled and paved over, and life continued as though nothing had happened. Another time, the sea pulled back far from the shore, leaving fish flopping helplessly on the sand. Children laughed and ran to collect them, while elders grew pale with dread. They knew the sea only withdraws to gather strength, to return with destruction. Yet, when the tide rolled back in, it came quietly, and the people mocked those who had trembled in fear. The warnings kept coming, and the people kept ignoring them. Perhaps they could not imagine that their shining city, with its towers and temples, could ever truly fall. Perhaps they believed that fortune favored them too greatly for disaster to strike. But history teaches us this: when pride blinds a people, they failed to see the dagger raised above them, and so the city danced, feasted, and laughed, even as the earth groaned beneath their feet, and the sea clawed hungrily at their shores. The omens had spoken, the curse had stirred, the night of judgment crept closer with every passing hour. Chapter 3. The fateful night. Night began like any other. The city glowed with firelight, its streets alive with laughter and the rhythm of drums echoing from the palaces. Merchants closed their stalls, priests lit incense in their temples, and nobles raised golden cups to toast their eternal glory. Children drifted to sleep beneath walls they believed indestructible. None could know that before dawn their world would be gone. It started with a sound. At first it was faint, a deep groan, like the earth itself awakening from slumber. Cups rattled on tables, the ground quivered beneath bare feet, and torches flickered violently. People paused, waiting for silence to return, but silence never came. The groan grew louder, swelling into a roar that shook the very foundations of the city. The earth split open in the marketplace, swallowing stalls, animals, and the unlucky souls still wandering its streets. Cracks raced like lightning through stone-paved roads, tearing buildings apart as if they were made of clay. Statues toppled, temples shuddered, and screams filled the night air. Then came the sea. From the distant shore, a sound like thunder rolled across the darkness. The ocean, which had always kissed the city's harbors, rose in fury. Waves higher than any wall rushed forward, glowing silver in the moonlight. Ships were torn from their moorings and hurled into streets, crushing anything in their path. Water poured through alleys and palaces, sweeping people away as they cried for gods who no longer listened. Lightning ripped across the sky, illuminating towers collapsing into rubble. Fire erupted where oil lamps overturned, flames devouring what the flood did not claim. The air reeked of smoke, salt, and blood. Families clung to one another, praying as their homes crumbled. Some climbed to rooftops, only to watch in horror as the sea rose higher still. Inside the royal palace, chaos reigned. The king is said to have stood on his balcony, his voice lost beneath the storm, commanding the waters to retreat. Others claimed he fled through secret tunnels, never seen again. Legends differ, but all agree on this: the dynasty ended that night. Its power drowned alongside its people. Priests carried sacred relics into the streets, raising them high as though divine symbols could command mercy. But the heavens answered with another tremor. Towers fell, crushing priests and relics alike. Survivors screamed that the gods had abandoned them, punishing their arrogance at last. Everywhere, people ran, yet there was nowhere to go. Gates shattered, bridges collapsed, and the once sturdy walls cracked apart. Mothers searched for children, husbands for wives, but in the chaos, voices were lost in the roar of destruction. Some swore they saw shadows rising with the waves, colossal figures moving within the waters, as though ancient sea spirits had come to drag the city down. Others told of a fiery chasm opening beneath the earth, swallowing entire districts whole. Whether truth or terror-born visions, it no longer mattered. By midnight, half the city was gone. By dawn, there was nothing left. Where towers had once gleamed, only waves churned. Where markets had bustled, only silence lingered. The city that had stood for centuries was erased in a single night, its glory swallowed, its people entombed beneath water and stone. Those who lived far beyond its walls told stories of a glow on the horizon, of the earth shaking beneath their feet, of a sound like the heavens splitting apart. But when they came searching days later, they found only the sea. Not a tower, not a street, not a single stone stood above the waves. The eternal city was gone. It had danced, feasted, and believed itself immortal. But pride had met its price, and in one night, just one, the jewel of an empire was reduced to legend. Chapter 4. Survivors. And legend. The sun finally rose over the horizon. It shone not upon golden towers and bustling streets, but upon silence. The proud city, the jewel of its empire, had been swallowed whole. Yet scattered among the ruins and across distant lands, there were those who survived. Not many, but enough to carry the tale. They were fishermen who had taken their boats far from the harbor on that night. When the waters raged, they clung to the open sea, watching in horror as a wall of waves rose behind them, drowning the land they called home. Some drifted 4 days before reaching another shore, broken in body and spirit. There were shepherds on the hills who had watched the city's lights flicker, then vanish in the chaos of fire and flood. They spoke of hearing screams carried on the wind, of watching towers collapse like toys. Some ran back to search for family, only to find endless water where once stood gates and temples. Others were travelers, merchants and pilgrims who had left the city days earlier. They returned to find nothing but ocean where streets had once stretched, the coastline forever changed. They became the first witnesses to carry the truth beyond the horizon, spreading the story of a city destroyed in a single night. Each survivor told the story differently. To some, it was punishment from the gods. They spoke of arrogance, greed, and rulers who believed themselves untouchable. They claimed the heavens had sent fire and water to cleanse the city of its sins. These tales became warnings, passed down to remind future generations that no city, no matter how great, is immortal. Others whispered darker things. They said it was not the gods, but the earth itself that grew restless, reclaiming what had been stolen from it. Some swore they saw monstrous shapes in the waves, titans of the deep rising to drag the proud city below. Whether born of truth or terror, these accounts gave rise to myths of sea spirits and cursed bloodlines, forever binding the city's fate to the supernatural. Among the most haunting legends was that of the king. Some survivors insisted he had been dragged into the sea, his crown still glinting as the waters closed over him. Others claimed he escaped through secret tunnels, wandering the earth as a broken man, cursed to witness the fall of everything he once ruled. One tale said he still walks the shores on stormy nights, searching for the city that betrayed him. For the people who listened to these tales, the city became more than history. It became a symbol of human pride, of divine wrath, of the fragility of greatness. Songs were sung about it, turning tragedy into myth. Children grew up hearing of the city that vanished beneath the waves, their imaginations filling the gaps left by truth. And yet, there was always a deeper sorrow in the voices of those who had truly been there. They carried the weight of memories, of faces lost in the flood, of laughter that would never return, of a home erased forever. To them, the city was not legend, but grief. Their stories were warnings, yes, but also laments. Generations later, the survivors' descendants still spoke of that night. Around campfires, they would say, "Our ancestors lived in a city so proud, so magnificent, it believed itself eternal. But in one night, it was gone." Remember this, nothing lasts forever. And so, the city lived on, not in stone or in towers, but in words. It became immortal in the only way it could, as a story, retold across centuries, reshaped by fear, faith, and imagination. Chapter 5. Forgotten beneath the earth for centuries after the city's destruction, silence ruled where laughter once echoed. The proud walls, the golden towers, the bustling markets, all had been erased, leaving only water and shifting earth. What could not be drowned, however, were the stories. They spread like roots across kingdoms, carried by survivors, travelers, and poets. But time is a ruthless thief. With each generation, memory blurred, and truth became tangled with legend. The city became less a place and more a myth, a tale told in hushed voices around firelight. Children heard of a city swallowed in pride, a city cursed by gods, a city dragged to the depths by monsters of the sea. The details changed, but the lesson remained. No glory lasts forever. Some believe the city never existed at all. Scholars in distant lands dismissed it as folklore, a warning carved into story rather than stone. Cities do not vanish overnight, they argued. This is but a fable. Others disagreed, pointing to fragments. A shard of pottery found far inland, coins washed ashore where no kingdom had minted them, broken columns discovered beneath layers of silt. Were these remnants of the lost city, or relics of some other forgotten people? No one could say. Travelers told of strange ruins glimpsed at low tide, pillars rising briefly before being swallowed again by the sea. Sailors swore that on moonless nights they heard bells tolling from beneath the waves, echoing like ghostly reminders of a world long gone. Fishermen whispered of shadows moving under their boats, not fish, not whales, but the outlines of towers buried in the deep. Generations turned into centuries, and still the city remained hidden. Empires rose and fell, languages changed, borders shifted, but the legend endured. Some likened it to Atlantis, others to Pompeii, still others to cities whispered in sacred texts. Each culture reshaped the myth, making the lost city its own. Yet human curiosity is relentless. Explorers, treasure seekers, and mystics journeyed to the rumored coastlines. They scoured shorelines, dove beneath waves, and dug through ruins swallowed by earth. Most found nothing but stone and silence. A few returned claiming visions, of stairways leading nowhere, of mosaics glimmering under sand, of skeletal hands clutching broken crowns. Their words only deepened the mystery. The priests of later ages declared the city a moral parable. They spoke of it as a punishment for arrogance, using its legend to teach humility to kings and peasants alike. To them, the city was not meant to be rediscovered. It was a warning carved in absence. But for seekers of truth, absence was not enough. The lost city haunted them. Writers penned scrolls imagining its streets. Artists painted visions of its towers, half buried in the ocean. Philosophers debated whether it had been destroyed by divine wrath, natural disaster, or forces beyond comprehension. The city became a mirror, reflecting the fears and hopes of each new age. Meanwhile, the land itself kept its secret. The earth shifted, the sea rose and fell, storms raged, and centuries of silence buried the ruins deeper still. What had once been alive with fire and music was now hidden beneath layers of time, waiting. And so the city slept. It slept beneath waves and soil, its bones entwined with the roots of the earth. It slept in silence, as empires forgot its name, and poets reshaped its story. It slept until curious hands and restless minds would one day seek to uncover it, for though pride had brought it down, and centuries had buried it, no city that once lived so brightly can ever be completely erased. Legends, after all, have a way of outlasting stone. The city that once stood in glory now lingers only in fragments, in whispers, in ruins, in the restless dreams of the sea. For some, it was punishment from the gods. For others, it was a tragedy of nature, the earth shifting, the waters rising, time claiming what pride had built. Yet the mystery remains. Did the city truly sink in a single night? Or did centuries of disaster weave themselves into a single tale of sudden doom? We may never know. What we do know is this: the legend has outlived the city itself. Archaeologists still search for traces beneath the waves. Divers still whisper of broken pillars resting in the deep, and storytellers still speak of bells that toll beneath the sea. Every generation, it seems, rediscovers the story in its own way. Perhaps that is the true immortality of the city, not in stone, nor in towers, but in memory. Its walls may have crumbled, its streets may have drowned, but its story continues to echo across centuries, and maybe, just maybe, that is the warning it leaves us. That even the greatest of civilizations can vanish, that arrogance can summon ruin, and that no city, no matter how eternal it may seem, is safe from the silence of a single night. The city is gone, but its legend will never sink.